Welcome to VISTA Table Talks, the summer series. I'm Kim Chin, the Assistant National Director of the Up2Us Sports VISTA program, and we are joined today by Up2Us Summer VISTA, Julia Arsenault, serving at BAWSI, and Romina Palmero, serving at Skate Like a Girl in Seattle. Today, they are going to discuss the impact sports has had on their lives. Leading today's conversation is Maria Sandoghdar, an Up2Us Summer Cohort leader and lifelong athlete herself. Maria, please take it away.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you both for being here today. I really appreciate you sharing your experiences. So before we get started with the questions, if you guys could just introduce yourself, your name, your host site, and any athletic background you all have. Julia, can you take it away?
Hi everyone, I'm Julia. I'm serving as a summer vista at BAWSI in the Bay Area in California. Since I can remember, I've always been playing sports. I really wanted to try everything under the sun when I was little. But fast forward to high school, I sort of settled on field hockey and lacrosse. And I am currently entering my senior year as a goalkeeper on the field hockey team at Bowdoin College in Maine.
Hi, I'm Romina. I'm working as a summer vista with Skate Like a Girl in Seattle. I also tried a lot of sports growing up, but I couldn't really find one that I and roller skating and kind of realized that that was what I liked.
Thank you. All right, so let's head right in. So first off, what have you both learned about yourselves, like from playing sports? Romina, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I actually part of why I wanted to do this, like the table talk, is because I have like a super complicated relationship with like sports and athletics. I never would have thought that I would have coached in any way, shape, or form. I was like not I didn't have good experiences with coaches, with sports. So I feel like honestly sports in my youth taught me like bad things about myself, that I like wasn't capable, that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't work hard enough, that I wasn't motivated enough. Those were like very difficult things to unlearn as an adult. But now I feel like I've learned the opposite. I am capable, I'm very motivated, I know what I need to do, I can work towards my goals, but it took a long time and a lot of work to undo that.
I it's funny because I personally believe that the worst coaches have like they just can ruin someone's life. And it's
Mhm.
like growing up, especially as a kid, it's having that impact, it's just so negative for your mental health, which we'll get into in a second. But it's funny how you said that you would never thought you were gonna be a coach, because I think that like those who were coached by like horrible people turn out to be the best coaches out there, just because they know what not to do. They know
Yeah.
how to
And you
treat human
understand, like
beings.
you understand the impact of what you're doing, because you know how much it can hurt if it's done badly. So I feel like you come in with so much intention that it's very different from somebody who maybe is just going and being like, I'm just gonna like whatever, teach whatever, have fun.
Exactly.
I feel like I definitely resonate with that too. I think my relationship with sports throughout my life has been kind of complex and multifaceted. But for me, I think sports offered a space for like me to grow as like a person and a woman. I think you kind of learn that throughout successes and facing adversity, like you learn resilience and confidence. And I think when thinking about this question, what spoke most to me was regardless of the outcome, you find something you can celebrate and something you can learn from. I think which is important to keep in mind, like throughout life, like whether you win or whether you lose in a game or in life, it's important to find something that you can always celebrate and something that you can learn from.
I definitely agree with that. I feel like it's very, especially as like a younger child, let's say you lose a game, you don't really think about the fact that like you learned something out of those practices, out of the game itself. So yeah, it's very easy to look at things in a negative way, but I really like that perspective.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think it's important to remember also, like, even if you lost, like, there was probably something that you did well in that game, and, like, focusing on that rather than focusing on like your mistakes is really what I think keeps you going.
I definitely agree. And kind of along with that, how has being an athlete affected both of your mental health? I know this is a very long conversation we could all have.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I had said before, it was like it affected my mental health very negatively for a long time. And then I was able to kind of turn that narrative around for myself, which I think in a way, like doing that for yourself is very powerful. I think it's even more than just um learning how to think positively. It's like genuinely doing it for yourself in a way where it's like you're really like taking control and back from the things that happen, the bad things that happen to you. I feel like is very empowering, right? But growing up, I would say sports affected my mental health pretty negatively. In team sports, I struggled with some bullying, because of that idea of winning and losing, right? If we lost and it felt like I messed up and I did something wrong and everybody was blaming me, or it felt like everyone was blaming me, it was like so difficult. Now in skating, because skating is a sport that it only relies on you, it's been very positive for my mental health because I'm able to focus on like, what do I want to accomplish? Like, what do I care? Like, I'm the only person who gets to say whether I won or lost in a day, you know?
I
Yeah.
like how you brought up the team sport versus individual sport because I can definitely relate to that. I play water polo, but I used to do swimming, and like swimming is very, other than like relays, it's very individual. And I enjoyed that aspect so much more because there was only one person to blame, and it was me. If I did something wrong, it's literally no one else's fault. But like with water polo, like a team sport, it's like you're constantly comparing yourself to your teammates. You're constantly like, again, if you make a mistake, it's a team sport. At the end of the day, it's everyone's fault. You know, like if someone scores a goal, all of us could have done something to prevent it. But it's so hard to like get it in your head that like, oh, it's everyone's fault, not just my fault. And I like how you brought that point up.
Yeah. I think I definitely resonate with that too, especially as a goalkeeper. Like, I think being on a team is like super comforting because at the end of the day, like being a goalie, your mistakes are super visible. Like, it's a goal on the scoreboard, and that can like really take a toll on your mental health. But like, for me, it's like it had to get through 10 people before it got to you. So, like, I think that's why I have that perspective of like coming out of the game, whether you won or lost, like focus on things that you learned and focus on something that you can celebrate. And I think the question about like how has being an athlete affected your mental health is almost opposite for me from what Romina experienced. Like, I think when I was younger, like the emotional release of playing sports was like something that I love and is something that I don't think I can replicate doing anything else. But I think playing sports at a high level becomes more competitive and there's more expected of you. So I think it's easy to get lost in these expectations sometimes. But one quote that I have hung up in my locker at school and something that I always return to, um, goes like, somewhere behind the athlete you've become and the hours of practice and the coaches who have pushed you is the little girl who fell in love with the game and never looked back. Play for her. And so I think for me, like reminding myself why I started sports to begin with, and also reminding myself of the things that I've learned and the things that I've done really well is super comforting. But I do understand that like being an athlete like can affect your mental health in negative ways, and I've definitely been there. But I think like part of growing in sport is like figuring out ways that you can cope and also like finding the love for the game again.
And I
I
definitely feel like, oh, I'm sorry,
no, no,
Maria.
go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I did think about the idea of like positions also make a difference in a team sport, right? Like, there's certain positions where you have more pressure, you have more. So, like, I played volleyball and I was a libero, where like you're really your job is to like save everything, and it's like, well, if you mess up, then it's like, well, you messed up your one job. You had one job
Right.
and you messed it up, you know, like, and it's like, ah, God, like it was just way too much pressure for me, and I do wonder if I would have a different story if I had kept playing sports into like college. I just didn't play. So that's why I don't have like negative effects because I just didn't even have the pressure of like I just wasn't part of sports when I was in college. I just like and even like in high school, like halfway through high school, I just stopped playing sports and I was just like it's fine, you know, like I was like, I'm okay. But I always wanted to do something, and, you know, like I just couldn't find my thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure like for me, like sports in college has been awesome because it's brought me a lot of things beyond sport. Like it's brought me
Mhm.
my closest group of friends, and like also like great connections for like career
Mhm.
opportunities. Like ultimately that's how I found BAWSI, was through sport in college. Um but I think, yeah, I think, and it's probably the same for you. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, Romina, but I'm sure skating has brought you some friends throughout your life and other
Oh, yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, skating is the reason why I have like the career I have now, pretty much. Like it's like if I hadn't started skating, I wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing now. Not just with Skate Like a Girl, but I'm a co-founder of a skate nonprofit in Florida. And so I'm learning from Skate Like a Girl to build on the nonprofit I run in Florida. And it's like my life would be nowhere where it is now if it hadn't been for skating and for like that sport, which is interesting because skating is such a the way skaters talk about it was always very like anti-jock. Like it was kind of like the punk-ish sport. But it's getting real legit now. We're in the Olympics.
I like how you both brought up the like turning a bad thing into a good thing, and I think that's also very important because sorry, for me as well. You know, it's very. I also play in college, so it's very. It can get hard sometimes, and you know, mental health goes crazy nowadays. But but yeah, it's just easy to kind of forget why you're even there to begin with and why you started doing it. So it's nice to take a second and step back and be like, okay, this is why I like this sport. Like me 10 years ago wishes she could be in this position. So it's like
Mm.
it's a very humbling moment to kind of like sit back and think, okay, like I belong here. I want to be here. I enjoy this. So that's yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of going along with this, were there things that your coaches did or didn't do that helped you guys with like your negative, you know, experiences in athletics?
I think that's a really great question. I've been super fortunate that I've had really great coaches throughout my life. And I think that's definitely shaped my positive experience in sport. My head coach and assistant coach in college are like family to me at this point. And I think one thing that they do that's like really helped me in my experience is they care about us like as a whole person, not just as an athlete. And I think that's really essential in college because, you know, like I go to like a very rigorous academic institution as well. So I think like supporting us as students and supporting us in life beyond sport, like honestly, my assistant coach, like I'll probably send this to her to listen to, and she's gonna be like, haha, the times you showed up like crying in my office. Like, but like I think there's a lot of people who can't say that they could do that like comfortably. But I think it's been really awesome to have them as like my number one supporter. And like I don't think I would be like half the person or woman I am today without like their positive role models. But like with that said, I do know there are a lot of people who have had negative experiences. And like when I go home in the summer to play in my pickup leagues, like it's like baffling to me to hear the things that like my friends who are playing at other schools have been through. And I just like feel so fortunate. So I'm interested to hear like your both of your experiences and how they've differed from mine.
And I know for me, again, I feel like I've gone really low key growing up. I never really had a coach that I didn't like or that didn't like me. But everything, like you said, like, you know, I had the same coach all throughout high school and my first 2 years because I went to community college. So it was very nice to kind of like, I had that foundation. I knew I had like someone to fall back on. I felt very comfortable with my coach and I could just always kind of like, if anything happened, I knew who to talk to. And it was very nice having that. Even now in college, I just finished my first year and both of the coaches were just so nice. And it was, you know, we would sit down during meetings and I felt so comfortable. And like, if anything was happening, I knew I could like let them know. And kind of like going back to what Romina said earlier about like having bad coaches and how like that messes you up. I'm very grateful that I got to not experience that, but I'm very interested to hear what Romina has to say about this.
And I have some coach horror stories. Real bad. The thing is that I've learned throughout my life that I'm just not like a naturally athletic person. It just tends to take me just a little bit longer to like get the hang of things, like hand-eye coordination wise. I'm very intellectually fast, but when it comes to physical things, it just takes me a little bit longer, I would say. And so I think when I look back now, I see coaches were frustrated with me more than anything. But at the time as a child, I'm like, why do you hate me? you know, I just had so many. One of the earliest experiences I remember was like having a coach at some point tell me that I should just give up. Like I just shouldn't try anymore. Like that I just wasn't good at this. And even if I try to put myself in the position of like, okay, maybe they were trying to help, like maybe they thought I just think there was like a million better ways to say it than pretty much just like, you should give up. you know Later on, later on I had coaches that, everyone, I did taekwondo for a while, and which is like more of an individual sport, but the environment was just really awful, and everybody was like, they were always making everybody cry, and they were making like the grown men cry in the practices and stuff, and it was just like so crazy. And my parents had done like this big contract, so I had to be there for like 4 years or something, and I used to just fake sickness all the time to get out of it, and I used to like do all sorts, like it was just so miserable, like, and the worst part honestly of it all is I didn't learn anything. Like that's the worst part. Like it's not like I came out knowing taekwondo. Like I didn't learn anything because they didn't teach anything. So it was just like, then later on when I had a volleyball coach that was like the first coach that I had positive experiences with. In the context, it ended up making my time there more difficult, because what ended up happening is like she believed in me a lot and she was really supportive, but that ended up making the other teammates who had been doing volleyball like their whole lives feel kind of betrayed and kind of like angry and upset, and and I don't even want to say jealous, because I don't think that's really what it was, just genuine like frustration of like, I've worked so hard to get to where I am, and then this person just kind of comes in, and because you like want to believe in them, they take away maybe the opportunity that they felt they really wanted, and so I can understand that in a way. But because we were young, and because I think there was a lack of knowing how to express that, it just resulted in kind of like bullying, you know? And so I feel like, again, even the positive experiences ended up in the context of what was happening being negative, which really was sad, because again, it's like I look back at those coaches, like that coach believed in me so much. He really wanted me to do well, but maybe she didn't think about like what like everybody else's thoughts maybe, and how it could be affecting it. And even like thinking about, right, when we talk about what did coaches do or what did they not do, right, what didn't they do, and even what you're talking about, well, both of you have talked about that, like you could go talk to your coaches if something was going on, even this coach like really believed in me. I didn't feel like I could talk to her about real important things. I felt like at the time when I was doing volleyball, I had a lot of very severe mental health issues, just like very severe depression and anxiety, and I was struggling with self-harm. And I know she noticed, and I think she felt out of her depth in addressing it. And I wish she had just said something, even if it didn't have to be a solution. I wish it had been acknowledged. And so sometimes when I think about what didn't they do, right? That idea of just caring for me as a whole person, of just looking past the sport and being like, well, how are you feeling? Like, are you okay? Like, how's your life? Like, are you managing things? Which I wasn't. So yeah, I feel like those are like, so it's sad because it's like, I don't have any resentment towards that volleyball coach, for example. But looking back and reflecting, I can think about how now as a coach, I try to be super mindful of like every angle, because you never know what kinds of like side effects you're having,
Right.
That's a long
You know
answer.
what I think is like really interesting that you bring up, that I was sort of thinking of throughout the whole thing, is how like I think what makes a good coach is someone who understands that like all of their players like might want to be coached differently. Like
Mhm.
I think that like what has made like my experience in college so great is like my coaches, like, I think know that I'm someone who kind of like needs like less affirmation. Like, I want to have to work for a compliment. Like, if you throw compliments at me 24/7, I'm going to think I'm going to be like gaslighting myself in my head, being like, oh, I'm not actually doing well. So, but then there's people who do need constant affirmation. And so I think like what makes a good coach, and like when we revisit that question, like what do coaches do well or not do, I think understanding your players and the way that they receive criticism or the way that they need affirmation is super important. And I think like something we both obviously have taken away from this question is that like the value of like coaching and seeing them, like seeing people as a whole person, which I think is really great that like now there's more focus on mental health in coaching, because maybe like for your volleyball coach, like it wasn't that she didn't want to help, it's just that she didn't know how. um which at my school, I think in the past few years, they've done a lot more trainings regarding mental health in sports, which I think is great because it gives coaches the tools to be able to help with those sort of experiences.
And I also think that, like, for some reason, coaches or everyone in general think that when you're in high school, like, that they just think that mental health issues only arise when you're in college. And like the second you play D1, D2, D3, that's when, like, no, mental issues could start in middle school. Like, it's not. And as a coach, like both of you said, treating someone as a human being, not just as an athlete, like as a coach, I feel like that's you kind of need to know how to handle that and know how to see that and know, because again, if you're struggling as a child, it's not gonna really get easier just by itself. And it's nice to kind of have that support system as like away from home, because maybe someone like a child doesn't want to like go to their parents and be like, oh yeah, like my sport is making me depressed. But it's like you can talk to your coach and be like, hey, like this is making me depressed. Help me. Like, how do we fix this? Because it's like, that can just ruin a kid's experience for the rest of their lives. And it's sad to like see that. And then I actually have a question. I know, Romina, you said, you had bad experiences with volleyball and stuff. How did you end up finding skating? Because I'm very like intrigued because you said you found it later in life.
Yeah, so I tried skating when I was a kid. I went to the skate shop, I built my whole board, I did the whole 9 yards, and I tried skating probably one time, and I fell super hard, and I was like, "I'm never doing this again." When I was a kid, there was no such thing as, like, skate lessons or, like, skate coaches or, like, everything was just like, oh, like you teach yourself, you show up and you throw yourself. Like that's what it is, especially again, like skating had that kind of like anti-jock thing. So it was like there was no such thing as like skate coaching or skate lessons or things like that. And so I look back now and I'm like, if there had been, I definitely would have done it and I probably would have stuck to it. Um, but I totally gave it up. And then as I became an adult, like probably in college, um, I just got really intrigued with like online like women and LGBTQ skaters, and I was kind of like there's like this influx of um that kind of like what is called non-traditional skaters in the skate community, and I started being like, oh, I want to do this, like I want to do this, I want to do this, but I never really got into it until I was in Chicago over a summer with my partners. My partner was going to school in Chicago, and there is this really amazing skate organization in Chicago called Fro Skate that focuses on Black and brown skaters and like transforming skaters. Um, at the time, we were like skating together, and I ended up finding out about them online and showed up to like some of their stuff, and I just spent the whole summer skating with them. And that was a structure where, and this comes up a lot with skating, is like even as like a coach with skating, it's hard, like you're not you're like a facilitator more than anything, because skating is so like unique. Like people can skate whatever feels comfortable, like as long as you're landing it. Like people can't really tell you, they can try to tell you things, but if you're landing it, like you're landing it, like that's it. But yeah, I really ended up like loving it because of Froskate, because there wasn't like this structure of like coaching. And even now when there is like more structured things, I've learned how skating can look a much more like facilitation than teaching and coaching. Even right now, like, right, we're working summer camps. And when I did volleyball summer camp, it's like a totally different vibe. Like, it's a very different. Skating is just, I feel like skating is the sport for people who struggle with organized sports, because it's so, like, just loose. And I think that I have nothing against organized sports. I just don't think it was for me, like, I think I love watching them. But I think being an athlete in that way was not it just wasn't compatible with me. So even what Julia was saying, like, learning how people coach, I think, or like, as a coach, learning how people want to be coached. It's also like, as an athlete, learning what you want out of coaching, what you want out of sports, what you want out of, like, and even in a broader sense, what do you want out of life? Like, because sports will teach you so much about life. So it's like, what do you want to learn about life? Do you want to learn more about teamwork? Do you want to learn more about individualism? Do you want to learn? So I think, like, there's all these different things that have led me to, like, kind of weirdly get into skating, because it just made sense for me to learn more about myself and learn less about team sports and have a less structured environment. And yeah, and now I've learned, right, that falling is, like, a huge part of skating. You can't skate without falling. So if I had known that as a kid, maybe I wouldn't have given it up so fast.
That's actually interesting, because I don't really know that much about skating. So because I was wondering, I was like, how do you coach someone in skating? So I'm glad you kind of said that, like, more of a facilitator. And I feel like that takes away, like, the whole pressure of, like, having a bad coach, because they're not really, it's more like a buddy and just having someone there
Yeah.
to, like, help us
And
out.
I
So
still do see people struggle, for example, with skating. If a skate coach who's doing the wrong thing usually will be too overprotective
mhm.
of the students, and maybe, like, trying to make sure they don't fall, without realizing, like, you literally have to. Like, that's just part of skating. And what I think is really interesting about skating is, for example, in a sport like, let's say, soccer, right? The best of the best, the professionals, the ones who are going to, like, the highest levels, for example, when they run, like, they're not falling. Like, they know how, they're running. Like, they generally speaking, they're not, like, mm, hugely failing. Like, there's a point where you get to, you can do what you need to do. With skating, like, the absolute professionals are falling all the time. Like, they are falling 90% of the time, not maybe 80 to 90% of the time. So that makes skating a very interesting sport in that way.
That's interesting. Thank you for sharing, actually. And kind of like in a lighter note, I know you talked about this, but like, how have your sports, helped you with any, like, skills like teamwork, time management, self-confidence, self-esteem, like all that stuff?
I can jump in. I think that sports for me, and especially being a goalkeeper. So like, I know I've been plugging goalkeepers the whole time, but like, I think there's like a misconception about goalkeepers when you're younger, that like they're the people that you throw in because they're like unathletic, and like nothing makes me more annoyed than that, because like I can run, I run the run test, like, and you like can be athletic, and like being a goalkeeper at the highest level, like you need to be very athletic. But I think in terms of life skills, the things that you learn are like so powerful. Like, for example, communication and collaboration are essential to team sports, on the field and off the field, in terms of like resolving conflicts within the team, because we can't be successful on the team on the field if we're not united. And I think these two character traits are like so frequently asked in job interviews in my experience. So I think in professional settings, they value the ability to work in a team. They value your ability to collaborate, communicate, and complete your work in a timely manner. So I think that like all of these things, like that you're learning from sports, like can be extrapolated and applied to so many different life experiences.
I definitely agree with that. And as I don't know, because I've been playing sports for a very long time, so kind of just, for me, it's like, oh, teamwork. It's, I know how to communicate with my team, and it just feels like firsthand. And then I meet people that like have never played sports before, and I just like there's just such a huge difference, especially like in the workplace. I've had coworkers that have never played sports before at like CSUN where I go, and it's crazy like the way we both work and the way we both like communicate with each other, like the way we don't communicate. And I don't know, it's crazy to think like all that was learned through sports. And I know we've been talking badly about sports for the past 20 minutes, but at the same time, like, I know I've gotten so much out of it, and, at the end of the day, yeah, my mental health has gone through it, but I don't know, especially for, like, self-esteem and stuff, yeah, it can be hard, but I know when I graduate and when I go find a job, all of this is gonna, work in my favor, and when again,
Right.
like you said, Julia, like, when it comes to interviews and stuff, people love to see student athlete people because they know, like, you gotta meet requirements to even succeed as a student athlete, so, I don't know, I like the points you brought up.
Yeah,
And
and I think it's really sorry, Romina.
no,
I,
you're
I
totally
just was I just was thinking because a lot of the work I've been doing at BAWSI has been in grant writing and finding different research points. So uh, BAWSI is all about bringing sports to girls in under-resourced communities and children with disabilities. So a lot of what I've been doing is looking at like the benefits of participation in sport. And one of the like facts that has stuck out to me most while I've been doing my research is that Ernst& Young did a study a few years ago that 94% of women in C-suite positions played sports, and over half of those played sports at the collegiate level. So I think it's like just speaks to what we're talking about right now. Like these skills that you're learning to sport obviously translate to your career as well.
I was also gonna say, like, even when we think about, right, like the idea of like that we've been like talking bad about sports, I'm kind of like yes and no. Like it's like maybe we've been talking about some of the more negative aspects, or maybe I don't even know if negative, but it's the more realistic aspects of sports. And in a way, for me, I'm almost like I actually feel like those more realistic, more difficult experiences are what has created that resilience. I think that if you go through life without having like any issues, it may be difficult to see how much strength you have, right? Like if you're able to overcome difficult experiences, especially with something like difficult childhood experiences, I think it's a very powerful way to be like, oh, I can get through anything if I was able to get through those things. Especially like for me, I think like if I was like able to do what I wanted to do, even though somebody literally told me like you should just give up. Wow, like nothing can stop me, like, and I do think that's like very, and so this does go back a little bit. I'm not quite answering your question right now, but it does go back a little bit to what we were talking about with like turning the negative into positive. As someone who I've been like in mental health treatment almost my entire life because I've just had like very early diagnoses of depression and anxiety, and it was affecting my childhood. So I've been in therapy since I was really, really young. And something that I think is very hard for people to process in mental health is like, yes, mental illness is real. Yes, things are very difficult, but there is a certain point where you have to take responsibility for like your happiness as well. As difficult as that sounds, because I it's not like I want to be careful that it doesn't get confused with kind of like victim blaming or kind of being like, oh, just get over it. But there is a level where like you do have to take responsibility. Like you have to have the only person who can really change your experiences is yourself. The only person who can change your attitude, who can see the positive in the negative for you is you. Like nobody can force you to do that. So there does have to be a point where you kind of take a moment, take a step back, ground yourself, do whatever you need to do, and like start taking responsibility for yourself and start doing things to take care of yourself mentally, because nobody's going to do that for you. Like even the best coach, they can't make you take care of yourself. Like that's your responsibility as an adult, and as a human being, really. um I'm trying to think. Oh, but then in terms of, yeah, I mean, I think sports generally taught me, yeah, a good amount about teamwork. I learned a lot about teamwork, honestly, just in family. Just having a big family, because I'm Latin American, like just having like a giant family, I think that helped me communicate and learn conflict resolution. But skating has taught me more about that idea of like learning to fail, learning to get back up, understanding that progress doesn't have to look a particular way. Um, I feel like skating is such a like parallel to life in so many ways. You're like always falling, you're always like learning to get back up and like learning to take the scrapes, and taking care of yourself.
I like how you said that success looks different in everyone. That I was like, yeah, that because it's especially I know it's like for skating, you're falling, you're getting back up. But I know for me, for team sports, it's, like I said earlier, everyone's had a different, doing different things, different paces, different skills. And it's easy to kind of just compare yourself to them. But when you realize that, okay, we all started, at a different point, we all did different things to get here. But at the end of the day, we're all here, like we all got here, we're all in the same place, we're doing the same thing. And it's very easy to kind of forget that and kind of compare yourself. And that can lead you down a rabbit hole of bad mental health. But yeah, I like how you brought up that point. And
Success
then
isn't linear. It's not
yes.
linear. And I think that's like really like applicable to life and in sport. Because I think like there's times where you make really like, I think almost in like the later stages of your sporting career is when it becomes harder, because you're like in the beginning, you're learning, you're improving maybe. And then you get to a point where like the new skills that you're going to learn are so difficult that it takes you a while to achieve those goals. And I think like in life, like you're going throughout like education, you're learning, and you get to a point where it's like, okay, like you're figuring out what's next for you. And maybe the steps don't happen as fast as they used to. So
I definitely agree with that. And it's been hard to kind of grasp that concept, but once I did, things worked out. And then to wrap this up, what advice would you give to anyone who is hesitant to try sports? That's a good one. For me,
that's a really good question.
yeah.
Yeah.
I will just say it's all worth it at the end. And you're gonna meet lifelong friends, and you're gonna be in great shape. But you're gonna make great connections. You're gonna again meet lifelong friends. Everyone that you play sports with has obviously the same, you all want to succeed and you all want to be better at what you're doing. So that's, yeah. And, it's hard sometimes, but it's all worth it. That's the little bow, at the top of it.
I think speaking to it like a similar vein, I think aside from being so much fun and like a great form of physical activity, I think sports have given me more than I could ever imagine. Like my lifelong friendships have been formed on various school and travel teams. Like my coaches have like offered me guidance in life beyond field hockey, like I was talking about before. And then I think also the alumni network within my team and within the sport in general has like brought me so many career opportunities thus far, and I know the skills that I've learned from sport will help me in the future. So I think like while I love field hockey so much, it's more than just the sport that has kept me in the game.
Yeah. I feel like honestly, what I would tell somebody who's hesitant to try sports is like, just like, don't be afraid to try different things. Honestly, for me, it would be like, don't be afraid to, which is funny, right? Like for somebody who struggles so much with being told to give up, it's like, don't be afraid to give up. Like if something's not working if you're having a miserable time playing a sport, that sport is just not for you. It's supposed to be fun. Like it's supposed to be good and positive. I'm not saying every single day is going to be the best day ever, but generally speaking, there should be something drawing you to it. And if you are like showing up every day being like, oh, I hate this, like I don't want to do this, don't do it. Like and I wish that I had known that when I was younger, because I was always stuck in this idea that like I can't give up, like I can't give up, like I'm not a quitter, like I'm not, without thinking like maybe this just wasn't for me, like the right sport or the right. And it's so important to do sports because we need physical activity. And as somebody who, for me, like I don't like going to the gym, I don't like just working out and like just doing reps or whatever. I need sport. I need something that is a game or that is fun or that I can forget that I'm doing exercise for a little bit. Like I need that. And I think we all need that in some ways because we also need play as human beings. It's like enriching to our emotional health to play. So I feel like I would just tell someone like, just don't be afraid to jump around, and do what feels right for you, while also keeping in mind that there's a responsibility on your part to try to make the best of what you have, but also be realistic. If something isn't working, it's not working. There's nothing wrong with that.
And I feel like
I
especially
think
kids, like, they can't really make a decision at that age. So it's mostly like on their parents, like I know like a lot of parents put pressure on their kid to play like, like let's say your dad plays soccer, like now you have to play soccer, and it's like that's not gonna work out most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's like having that freedom and being able to be like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to play this sport. Like no one's
Mhm.
saying no, like I'm not gonna play
Right.
any sport. I'm just saying I don't want to play that sport. So
Exactly. And there's so many sports.
yeah.
Like
There's something for everyone, I think. And something I was thinking about regarding what Romina was saying earlier with regards to like not being afraid to fail. I think something that I always remind myself in sport too is like your failure is what makes your successes so sweet. Like if you weren't to like fail multiple times, like succeeding and like winning those big games or like whatever a win is in your sport, like it's not going to be as fun and like as satisfying if you don't fail on your way there. So while I totally agree, like maybe like as you're going out like trying sports and some aren't for you, like don't be afraid to fail because like
Mhm.
everyone is failing. And like Romina said, like the best skaters are failing, the best field hockey players are failing, the best water polo athletes, they're failing too. So I think like in order to succeed, we need those fallbacks.
I
And I've heard that before from people who are like, those people who are just like supernatural athletes? Like I've heard before, they're like, oh, I don't even enjoy it because it's just like I'm super good at it immediately and then I'm just bored, you know?
Right.
So it's like there is something to be said about, and that's what I'm thinking is like, if a sport is for you, even the failure will still be like you'll still feel motivated, like, and that's how right? If something, no matter what it is, the failures, the wins, everything just makes you feel heavy and awful, that's probably not for you, because the things that are for you, even the lowest points, you're able to connect to that like passion and that like this is what I really love though, and those feelings of like whatever that feeling is, right, of like for example with skating, like a first drop in or something, that feeling is like magic of just like this is what I love, like I think you can always connect to that if it's for you.
I definitely agree. Well, thank you both so much for sharing, and thank you guys so much for coming on this. It was great talking to you and learning about both of your experiences as athletes. So stay tuned for episode 3 of Table Talks, and yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.